Last class we have seen what is business communication, what are the characteristics of business communication, advantages and disadvantages and all. Now today we are going to deal with what is communication network, their divisions and all. So here we can see communication network can be divided into two, external communication and internal communication. Now what is external communication? What do you mean by external communication? Yeah, communication that takes place outside the organization is known as external communication. We can again divide this external communication into inward communication and outward communication. Give me one example of inward communication. Mails or messages that we receive from outside the organization to inside the organization is known as inward communication. Then what will be outward communication? Messages that go outside the organization is known as outward communication. It may be in the form of orders that we give to the suppliers. It may be all that. So communication network can be divided to external and internal. External can be of two types. Now what will be internal communication? Communication which takes place inside the organization is known as internal communication. It can be formal communication or informal communication. Formal communication means when the communication flows through a formal channel, when they follow a line of hierarchy, when the messages or information passes from the superiors to the last one or the employees, we call it as formal communication. In formal communication itself, we have three bifurcation. The first one is vertical communication. What is vertical communication? Top to bottom or bottom to top. Top level communication occurs in the form of a feedback or a suggestion from the employees to the superiors or to the managers. Downward in the sense it may be orders given by the managers to the subordinates or managers to the employees. But when these communication flows, it should be in a line of hierarchy or it should be in that order itself. Then you have informal communication. Informal communication can be of two types, grapevine and social gathering. What is social gathering? When do we gather? So people with common interest, common desire, common characters, when they come together, we call it as a social gathering. And there also they will communicate. But what type of communication will be they doing? Whether it's a formal or an informal, it is informal communication. So informal communication can also be called as grapevine communication. But this is the bifurcation of communication network. It can be divided into external and internal. External can again be divided into inward and outward. Again, internal we have two classifications, that is formal and informal. Formal can be again divided into three, vertical, horizontal and diagonal. And informal, which is also known as grapevine, occurs because of the social gathering. Now, next one we'll look more into it. First one is formal communication. As I told you, formal communication is always associated with the formal structure. The message or the information passes from the superior, from the CEO of a company to the subordinates. From the subordinates, it may pass to the employees, and from the employees to the lower line workers. The main objective of the formal communication is to ensure that messages are being passed smoothly, accurately, and it reaches where it has to reach. That is, receiving the messages at right time, right place to the right person. Now, that is the objective. Then here also we can see information flows smoothly, accurately and timely to the point at which it is required. Now the next one is, we'll see the merits of formal communication. First one is, it imparts correct information. Since formal communication usually it flows from the top level management, it gives you the right information or the right messages which has to be passed. And it flows through that channel itself. There is no intermediary coming in, or there is no additions or subtractions which are made in that messages. So as such, the message will reach the point where it has to reach. Then you have efficient mode of communication. It is considered to be an efficient mode of communication because it flows through the line of authority. There will be respect between the superiors and subordinates, and they keep their position and their standard. Then you have, there is always a direct contact between the communicators. and it also leads to organizational efficiency. As there is no intruders, or as it flows through the same line itself, there is no distraction happening, so it leads to the organizational efficiency. Then existence of authority, superior subordinate relationship also exists in formal communication. You can say that it provides you correct information, it leads to efficiency of the organization, and so on. Now we will see informal or grapevine communication. What is informal communication? Communication which is spontaneous, which is natural, or it basically occurs when there is a social gathering that is happening over there. So you can see it originates from social and personal interaction of the employees. There is no flow of direction, there is no hierarchy where the information is being flowed. It can start from anywhere, it can end anywhere. There is no exact there is no exact channel for this communication. Then it can start and end anywhere. As the size of the firm increases, the informal communication or the groups, these informal groups also keep on increasing. Now, types of grapevine. So there are basically 4 types of grapevine. First one is single strand chain. So the first type of grapevine communication is single strand chain. How does a single strand chain work? You consider this to be P, Q, R and S. So single strand chain works like when P communicates something to Q, Q will then pass that message to R will pass a message to S. So the message is being passed, or the information is being passed from one person to the another. So this we call it as single strand chain. Now the second one is gossip chain. So in gossip chain we can see only a single person communicates to many people. Suppose you consider this to be P. P will pass the information to Q. P will again go and pass it to R. P will then pass it to S, and P will again pass it to T. So here the information is being passed, the informal or the gossip, or it may be a rumor which will be passed from P to T, Q, R and S. P itself is going and passing the information. Now the third one is probability chain. Probability chain we can call it as a combination of both single strand chain and gossip chain. So in probability chain, we randomly select the people and then we pass a message. So in probability chain, we randomly select the people. Suppose you consider this to be P. P has randomly selected one person, Q, and he has passed a message to Q. Q has selected some person called as R. R has randomly selected 2 people, that is S and T, and has passed the information to S and T. Now the next one is cluster chain. In cluster chain, we don't randomly select individuals. We exactly knows to whom we have to pass a message. Suppose you consider this to be Ebison. Ebison, we all know that he is the class rep of this first BCom tax. Ebison is going and passing the message to, consider this to be Ebison. Ebison is passing the message to the class rep which is there in first CA. Let us name him as Joseph. Joseph will go and pass a message to the one which is there in the third CA class. Let us name him as Jarrell. Then Jarrell will again go and pass a message to class representatives in the economics department, that is first year economics department and second year. So here we can see that the message which is being passed is selected. We have people, selected individuals are being there. Here we don't have selected people, randomly the message is being passed. But here we know that the message should only be passed between the class reps of different classes. So that is the 4 types of grapevine network. Now the next one is merits of informal communication. First one is, it is a moral uniting force. Why do we call it as a moral uniting force? Why do we call it as a moral uniting force? Because people with common interest, common desire, common characters, they come together and they communicate with each other. So when they communicate with each other, there is an energy or there is a satisfaction, or when they share their emotions, when they share their characters, there is a some energy is working behind them, and it actually acts as a morale for them to work more or work hard to reach the goal of the organization. Second one, it saves time. Informal communication, it saves time because we don't follow a common channel. It is spontaneous, it is naturally happening. Next, speedy transmission of messages. Messages that are being passed from one person to another. It doesn't take much time. There is feedback system also working. Next, you have avoid misunderstanding and creation of ideas. Now the next one is demerits of informal communication. In informal communication, the messages which are being passed, most of them will be rumors or gossips. No formal messages will be passed through the line. Next is distortion. It leads to distortion because when one message is being passed from, suppose you consider message is being passed from Devi to Ebison, it will be having complete message. When it's being passed from Ebison to Vishnu, something will be missing, or Ebison will add more to it. So the complete message or the meaning of that message will be distorted. Then wrong interpretations and damaging the reputation. Since these rumors are being spreading, since these gossips are being spreading, or additions or subtractions are being made in these messages, it definitely will affect the efficiency of the organization, and it leads to damage of their goodwill. Now we'll see the difference between formal and informal communication. Here we can see formal communication, it is deliberately structured. There is a line of authority which is being followed. Communication flows from top level to bottom. Then here it is spontaneous and unstructured. Informal communication occurs when there is a social gathering. It can be a communication between peer to peer or between colleagues to colleagues. Then you are having official, as I told you, formal is an official channel of communication, whereas informal is an unofficial channel of communication. Then formal communication will be slow, informal communication will be fast. Formal will be accurate, whereas informal it will not be accurate. So I'll just wind up. First we have seen what is a communication network, differences, merits, demerits, and difference between formal and informal communication. Thank you.